Hi, film addicts. Welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we have an amazing guest, Geoff Whiting. He is an actor, stand up comedian, casting director, musician. He manages comics, and he's known for being the actor in A Moody Christmas, Sky Atlantic. And we want to welcome to the show. Welcome, Geoff.
Oh, hello there. Nice to speak to you.
Yeah. So Geoff,
Good to be here.
Yeah. So where can you tell our film addict listeners where you're recording live from today?
Oh, well, I'm in the UK. It's 10 past midnight here.
So
but luckily I never go to bed early.
So it is 4:00 in Los Angeles, and it's midnight. So Geoff has stayed up so that our film addicts can learn all about Geoff's amazing.
I have indeed.
Yeah. So, okay, great. So, Geoff, can you tell me one of your favorite films growing up as a kid?
Oh, I can, because I'm very much into sci-fi and futuristic things. So Blade Runner is my favorite movie. The original Blade Runner, 1982, because I love that movie. The atmosphere, it seems to be raining all the time, I noticed. But just the whole thing, the way it was shot, the atmosphere, the whole concept, I love, because I'm very interested still, and of course it's still happening now in other movies, the whole idea of whether it's replicants, androids, very human-looking robots, which of course are now already becoming almost a real thing. And I just love that aspect, and the whole idea of the replicants having this limited life of 4 years, and the sort of philosophy behind it. I just thought the whole thing was great. I love that sort of movie, and I just thought it was the best of its type. To me, even till now, I still think it is. Although I have seen some similar movies that are great, but I think it's the best. So,
it is a classic. And you know what?
It's 40 years old.
Yeah, I want to watch that tonight. You reminded me. That's a good one. Yeah. I mean, I remember it was scary and they had to get away from those android robots. And you're like, hurry. Yeah. That was a beautiful film. So,
it's just fantastic.
Yeah.
And, it's got philosophy in it all the way through as well. The whole thing, is Decker really an android himself? Is he really a replicant himself, or is he not? The whole thing, there's so many layers. You can watch it about 4 or 5 times and take different things from it. So I love that movie, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a testament to when you can watch a movie
definitely my favorite.
Over and over again, because a lot of movies, people say they only want to watch it once and they know everything. They don't need to see it again. But Blade Runner is one of those where you want to watch it over and over again. You're like, please don't remake it. It's good. Don't remake anything that's great. Write something new, right?
I know, but the funny thing is they made 7 versions of Blade Runner. 7 versions, because they had the one with him sort of doing a voiceover, narrating the whole thing himself, and then they did a version without that. I like the version when he was narrating it. Most people don't. They prefer the other version. And it doesn't matter. That's getting a bit too specific. But they made quite a lot of versions. But I love that movie. It's just everything. The ending, everybody knows the ending. It's he's hanging out of a window, or he nearly falls out the window, and Rutger Hauer's there playing Roy. And anyway, I won't go into it. But it's just a great movie. My favorite.
Great. And so I want to ask you, since you became this amazing actor and stand-up and musician, and now you're managing comics and you're even doing casting. So what was a film that inspired you to go into your career? Do you have a favorite Criterion movie?
Probably, strangely, in my case, although I'm a stand-up comic, I loved Peter Sellers. So Dr. Strangelove, even Being There, which was much later. So Peter Sellers movies, and of course Pink Panther. So the comedy of Peter Sellers is what I was inspired by. I think the guy was a genius. I know he had a very troubled personal life, which I always try and separate with artists, because I try and think of the art rather than whatever else happened is their personal life. But as an artist, as a performer and an actor, I thought Peter Sellers was fantastic. I mean, his comedy timing in Pink Panther, and also and the characters he played in some of the other movies like Dr. Strangelove, he was my comic inspiration. So the movies with Peter Sellers would be my answer to that.
I love that. Yeah, Pink Panther, like the funniest movie ever. I remember the one, what was the movie where The Party? Remember The Party?
Yes.
Yeah, comic genius, like pure
Yeah,
comic genius. I mean, so you picked some
he
good
really
ones.
was. Honestly, he did films in he spanned different countries. You know, he worked in the UK and then right across Europe. All these movies came out, and then obviously America as well. And he seemed to be able to work on across different cultures and different continents. You know, and some actors can do that, and some can't. But I just thought he was amazing. And he was, even though I'm a stand-up comic and he never was, he was an actor. I just thought his comic timing and his comic characters is what inspired me in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely genius. So I want to ask you, do you have a favorite director, and what is one of your favorite film shots from a movie?
Oh, my favourite director is Alan Parker,
Mm.
because my second favourite film is Angel Heart. That's my second favourite movie, Angel Heart. Mickey Rourke's best movie.
Oh,
And Alan Parker directed Heart, which is just an amazing movie. I absolutely love it. But Alan Parker, it's just that, I mean, he managed to, he managed to direct things like Bugsy Malone, but then also Pink Floyd The Wall, which I thought was amazing. Beginning of Pink Floyd The Wall is amazing. It's like two wooden doors shaking, but there's no sound whatsoever. It's just two wooden doors shaking as if somebody's trying to open them, but there's no sound. It's completely silent. And then as the doors break open, the music cuts in at full volume. It's just an amazing way to open the movie. So, and of course he did Mississippi Burning, which I think is a brilliant movie. And he made so many great films. He didn't make that many films. I mean, he may have made about 12 films, but I loved the work of Alan Parker. So, and probably Angel Heart, because it had recurring themes, fans spinning. He had some brilliant recurring themes, fans spinning. You kept seeing fans spinning in buildings, fans spinning in offices. There was a theme, an ongoing theme, a sort of haunting. And then there was this ongoing shot of somebody putting their hand on somebody's shoulder with like a black hood. And when the person turned round, which you don't see until the very end of the movie, they're a skeleton, they're a skull, but you don't see that. You see him putting his hand on the shoulder and the head starting to turn, and you see it repeatedly through the film until the end of the movie. And of course, Robert De Niro is in that movie as well. Robert De Niro played the devil in Angel Heart.
Oh, well,
and he had a very long fingernail and ate boiled eggs.
And he did what with boiled eggs?
Alan Parker is my favorite director. So, yeah. I mean, it's Mickey Rourke's best movie. I know he's done. There's a couple of others he did more recently that people said was perhaps one of his best ever. Some of his other works, but I think it's his best movie, Mickey Rourke.
Yeah, and I love how.
But anyway, Alan Parker is my favorite director.
Yeah, I like.
And I've got a favorite scene.
Yeah.
Not from my favorite scene isn't from Alan Parker movie. Actually, it's Coen Brothers. It's No Country for Old Men. Because I love that scene, which you definitely will know, where he's goes into the gas station and then he decides to, he just tells the guy he's going to toss a coin, and we, the audience, know that if he calls it wrong, he's going to shoot him. Javier Bardem does that scene in No Country for Old Men. So basically, he walks in and then the guy behind the counter doesn't know what's going on really, but he's saying, I'm going to flip a coin, call the coin. He says, what and the great line is, the guy says, what have I got to gain? And Javier Bardem says, everything, which is great considering, what he means is he's going to shoot him if he gets it wrong. But it's quite allegorical, really. That's why I like it. It's sort of allegorical to say the flip of a coin, because really, if you think about it, whether you leave your house or stay at home, walk out in front of a car by mistake or don't walk out in front of a car, a lot of it is on the flip of a coin, really, life. So I think it's an allegorical scene in some ways, because they seem to be suggesting, really, your life is hanging on the flip of a coin. In this case, literally, but in general, perhaps. I think they may be, Coen Brothers may be making that point. But I just love that scene. It's a great scene. Yeah. I mean, fantastic. Well, one of my favorites of all time. So that would be in my mind.
Yeah, and I just wanted to let the audience know, like when you were talking about the other movie, your Alan Parker film, what was it? Angel, what was the name of it?
Angel Heart.
Angel Heart.
Yeah, Angel Heart.
When you were talking about the fan spinning and the reoccurring themes, that really took me back to watching that movie, and it brought me into the environment and like the seduction and the mystery and like the invitation. So thank you. That was just, I want to see that movie just for those film shots. Thank you for sharing that.
It's really, everything cinematically, the plot is very complex, and it's a brilliant plot, but it's complex. It's got a bit of voodoo and black magic thrown in. It's just atmospheric. Robert De Niro's great. Ricky Rourke is really great, and everything about it. I just love that movie. I mean, and as I said, the recurring themes, the hand on the shoulder, the head that doesn't quite turn, the fan, it goes all the way through it. I just love it.
Yeah, and you picked a good one, Old Country, No Country for Old Men, the gas station with the coin toss. Love that movie.
Yeah.
Just like, so it was kind of like not slow, but it was like slow moving, and it took you into this slow pace relaxation, but you wanted to see the whole movie. So great job, Coen Brothers. And then also, I wanted to ask you, what kind of movie would you have loved to done?
Well,
so somebody can cast you in a role. They know what kind of role.
Well, the only reason I laughed at that point is that I'm not really. When I was young, I was rather athletic and sporty, but I'm not as much now as I used to be. But what I would love to have been Big Daddy in Kick-Ass.
Yeah, Big Daddy with an English accent.
Because Kick-Ass.
Can you say it in English?
Well, Kick-Ass is great film anyway. But Big Daddy, I mean, it's amazing. I would love to have done the scene where he blows up the crime boss's warehouse.
Yeah.
And he's got his uniform. Well, it's sort of slightly Batman-esque uniform that he puts on, and then he goes around and he's shooting people and throwing grenades around and setting fire to things, and he completely destroys this warehouse. All of which is being filmed on a secret camera through a teddy bear, I seem to remember. Which is how it comes to light later on. Yeah, weirdly. But I'd love to have done that scene. It must have been such good. I mean, perhaps it was very difficult to film technically and he didn't enjoy it at all, but it looks enjoyable when you watch it because he's walking around just taking people out, blowing things up, with this almost nonchalant sort of, vigilante sort of, a nonchalant vigilante, I describe him as. So I'd love to have played that scene.
Well, maybe you could be big grandpa or something.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Thanks very much.
Or big colonel.
I think I'm about the same age.
Or the colonel.
I think I'm about the same age as Nicolas Cage, actually.
Yeah.
But no, I just love that scene. It looked great. And whether, as I said, Nicolas Cage actually enjoyed doing it or it was incredibly complicated and hard work, I don't know. But it looks great when you watch it. I thought I'd love to do that scene.
Yeah, well, there's like the agent's bosses, like 007. So maybe they'll call you up and say, we want you to be like the kick-ass boss in 007. You're like, yeah. And guess what? You get to blow up warehouses. Woohoo!
Yeah, I think I'm available to play the elder statesman of the gang now.
Yeah, elder statesman will take it.
Yeah, well, the gang members always have an elder statesman guy, don't they? Who doesn't quite get involved in the action as much, but sits there giving out instructions to henchmen. I think I've got to the age where that's more my thing now. So, not so much doing the action as commanding other people. Fine.
Sure. Yes. James, I have a mission for you.
Yes. Well, yeah.
Yeah. Just
that's right. If that movie ever comes out. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of your favorite lines from a movie is one of my favorites. Can you say the line? Will you say
well, of course. I've already referenced it. My favorite line in the movie is, "Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room," which is Dr. Strangelove. But I love the line, "Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room." It's just a good line in itself. I just love that. And as I said, I'm a comedian, so I love comic lines, and I love that movie. So yeah, that's my favorite line. I mean, there are so many brilliant lines in movies, aren't there? So many, but I love that line.
Yeah, and and I know one of your favorite characters. Can you share us your favorite character from a movie?
Well, my favorite character from a movie, and of course, bearing in mind I'm speaking to you from England, is Sherlock Holmes, because the reason I like Sherlock Holmes is I love the fact he's very flawed. He takes opium. He doesn't sleep very well. He's, irritable a lot of the time. Yet he's a brilliant detective. The fact he randomly plays the violin at odd moments for no apparent reason. I just love the whole character of Sherlock Holmes, and the fact that he's he seems to be someone who has quite a lot of issues, but on the other hand is able to outwit ne'er-do-wells and mastermind criminals because he's still clever enough to outwit them. I just love the whole concept because he's such, I love the fact he's very typically English. I mean, very stereotypically old-fashioned English from his period, but also he's such an eccentric character, yet will take on, and also like the fact that Sherlock Holmes in some of the books, not in the movies necessarily, but will certainly have a fist fight with somebody. And in fact, I think he has done that in some of the movies, but certainly he's happy to get involved in fisticuffs, as we would call it in an old-fashioned English way, which is something else that normally these detectives, you don't really, not that sort of detective, You wouldn't see Columbo, punching somebody in the face, I don't think, but you would see Sherlock Holmes punching somebody in the face. So I like the fact he's sort of volatile, flawed, drug-taking musician. Really, I suppose that's what I like.
Yeah, and I like that he's always working on something because I'm ADHD too, and he's always in those disguises, and he does it. He's not very tidy, so yeah. Because when you're working so hard in all your projects, you need someone to help you clean up. Because I run 5 podcasts, and you're like, my dog is like, when do I get to go for a walk? So yeah, I love his disguises.
Yeah. I mean, so you're totally right about that. And what I love is you're right is that he has to have an assistant sort of babysitting him, looking after the house and making his food for him. Yeah, as I said, he can outwit, Moriarty, etc. I love it. The whole idea is very typically sort of British and whatever, but I love it.
Yeah. And so I want to ask, how did you start? Did you grow up in London? How did you start doing stand up and being a musician? Can you tell us how you started?
Well, I studied at college in Surrey, which is very near to London, and I joined something called the Surrey Youth Theatre in 1978, and it was great. It was a week. You went once a week in the evening on a Thursday night for maybe 15 weeks, and then you'd put on a show or a play. We did Midsummer Night's Dream, and I played Bottom in that with a donkey's head on, which is rather hot work. A face mask is nothing compared to wearing a donkey's head. But so I played Bottom in Midsummer Night's Dream, but then we also did Under Milkwood by Dylan Thomas. And that year, 1979, I acted alongside Michael Ball, and Michael Ball is a very well-known singer, West End. Well, he's released albums. He's appeared in Les Miserables and Phantom of the Opera, all sorts of things, Hairspray, and the West End of London.
Cats and Hairspray. So you worked with Michael Ball, who has done all these amazing performances in the West End, which is London's version of Broadway. So you did Cats and Hairspray. So you're working with Michael Ball. So you're amazing.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And he was 17 and I was 18. So there we are. Yeah. And anyway, I'll tell you, I don't know, I've got a story about Michael Ball. I can tell you now or later, whichever you prefer.
Sure, tell us.
Shall I tell you now?
Yeah.
I might. I'll be cut off at the last moment. No, Michael was always had this operatic sort of way of singing, which is good because he ended up being a singer in the West End of London, in West End musicals and Shaftesbury Avenue. But at that point, it wasn't a rock. He didn't have the vocals for a rock voice, a pop voice particularly, I thought. And we were in the car on one occasion because I used to collect him from his house every Thursday and drive him 10 miles to where the rehearsals were because he didn't have a car and I did. And I'd put the radio on and he would sing along to things. And Yellow Brick Road came on by Elton John. And he was singing along with this in a very, as I said, a sort of stylized, goodbye, Yellow Brick Road, that sort of style. And which was a very good voice, but not quite right for that song. And I said to him afterwards, I said, Mike, I don't really think you're cut out for that sort of thing. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, pop singing. And he said to me, this is a 100% true story. He said to me, Geoff, I'll have a #1 single in the next 10 years. And considering he was 17 and he had this strange way of singing and he didn't have a pop singer's voice, and at the time he was just at college trying to be an actor, I thought, it just seemed impossible. So I said to him, if if you have a number one hit record in the next 10 years, Mike, I'll buy a hat and eat it. And 9 years later, Love Changes Everything, which was him singing a track from a Western musical, was number one. And I got a message from him about a hat.
So you're like, you owe me a hat. What kind of hat was it? Was it a top hat?
Bowler hat's very hard to get hold of. I didn't buy it. I didn't buy the hat.
You're like, you can buy me one now.
But it's just unbelievable that I word for word we had that conversation, and he actually had a hit record 9 years later when he'd given me I'll be a number one in 10 years. The chances seem to be almost zero. It gives anybody listening to this hope, because at 17, the way he was then and the way things were, there would appear to me have been no chance of him having a number one hit single in the next 10 years, and he achieved it. So you can achieve your dreams, guys. That's what I'm telling you. But anyway, I went on to university after that, and I studied drama at the University of Exeter in Devon. And but I didn't really crack the acting. I did a bit of part-time sort of acting, and I just didn't get quite as far as I hoped. I didn't quite off the ground, but I did form a band called Prime Suspect, and I was the lead singer of that band and songwriter, and we secured a record deal when I was only 20 with a guy called Ray Dorset, who had his own label. He's better known as Mungo Jerry, who did a song called In the Summertime. Don't know if you remember this. In the summertime, when the weather is fine.
Yes. So that was your manager or publisher?
Yeah, it gets played every summer. Anyway,
that's your song.
Yeah, in the summertime when the weather is fine. Anyway, etc., etc.
Anyway,
he had his own record label.
Oh man, because it is sunny.
Yeah. He had his own record label, and he signed us. I was only 20, and we signed to his label, and we released a single, which we sold quite a few copies, but we didn't again make it big. We didn't get a big hit. And then in the next 5-6 years, I released about 5 or 6 more singles. Was in about 3 different bands, all with record deals. None of which got higher than about number 60 or number 70 in the charts. I was in a band in 1988, and we had a hit in Germany, number 6 in Germany, but that meant we toured Germany and sold out, but we didn't make it in the UK. And then my biggest claim to fame is that one of the songs I wrote ended up being featured on an album, a compilation album of different bands called Chart Attack, which featured people like Simple Minds and Duran and all sorts of a lot of very famous people. But we got a track onto that album, the band I was in, and I was the singer in that band. That sold 140,000 copies, which is what it used to have to sell in those days, and got to number 7 in the album charts, in the UK album charts. So there's 140,000 copies lying around somewhere of an album with a song of mine that I sing on it. But that was over 30 years ago, so I have no idea what any of those are. But
it's called Chart Attack. The album's called Chart Attack. What was your song's name?
The song the album was called Chart Attack, and that's a good question.
That's okay.
That's a very good question.
Okay.
I've got the album in the next room. This shows.
Well, we're going to have you come back. We're going to play a game.
But the name of the band was Strange Arrangement. That's what you need to worry about. The band was called Strange Arrangement. Yeah, Strange Arrangement. We were formed in 1982. And funnily enough, a band in America formed in about 87 and also called themselves Strange Arrangement because they were in America and we were in the UK and there was no internet and no social media. They didn't know we existed and we didn't know about them. But we actually were Strange Arrangement before they were. But there is an American band called Strange Arrangement, nothing to do with us. But we're on Facebook. We're under Strange Arrangement New Romantics. Because that was a style we played, which was sort of a bit like Spandau Ballet or Duran Duran. So we're under Strange Arrangement New Romantics, and we're on Facebook under that. And that would have all the details of the album. I cannot believe I can't remember the name of the track.
Well, we're going to have a little contest with our film addicts.
I wrote this. I did write the song.
Whoever gives us a review with
it doesn't matter. I've got the album in the next room. I'm looking up. I can tell you.
Yeah, we got it. Whoever gives us a 5-star review with the name of the song, we'll get a signed copy if they find that the record.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I will. I've got a copy here. Sign.
So So you started doing your music.
Yeah. Well, what happened after that, the money ran out, as it always does, or can do, if you're a musician. And I went into a day job for about 5 years as a food salesman, just traveling around selling food to different shops, just as a rep. And I did that for 5 years, but I carried on playing music in the evenings and performing. But then I was made redundant, and these are those. This is the toss of a coin moment that I was talking about from the movie. I was made redundant with no warning on the spot by the company.
Main company.
We're closing down. Yeah, we were called to a meeting, and they just said, "Leave your company car here. Here's a train fare to get home. We're closing now. The company's gone broke. Here's 1 month's wages," and that's it. And that changed my life, because I would have stayed in that job otherwise. Although I didn't love it, I still would have stayed in it for the sake of security. But I was suddenly unemployed, and within 6 months I was in debt and living in a bedsit, with no car, no phone, no landline, no mobile phone. I had to operate from a phone box. I had to go to a phone box.
A phone box?
No, I generally didn't. This was when I was 37. I had no phone, no car, no landline, no nothing. Almost no money. But anyway, I saw an advertisement in a national newspaper saying, "Are you funny? Blah blah. Could you be a comedian, etc." And I had been mentioned to me a few times over my career by various people that you tend to be a comedy actor and you tend to like to make jokes and you talk a lot, as you've noticed. And somebody actually said to me once, "If you could get paid for talking, that would be the best career you could get, Geoff, because you talk all the time. So if you could get paid for it, this is what you need to do." So when I saw this advert for comedians, I suddenly thought, well, I've never been a comedian, but I love comedy. I'll try and write some jokes. And you had to make a cassette, because this is the era of cassette tapes. You had to record yourself doing 2 minutes of your own material onto a cassette, no audience, just at home, just dry at home. Record 2 minutes into a recorder, onto a cassette tape of your jokes, and send it to this company, Avalon. And Avalon are actually, of course, the company that make John Oliver's show in the States, because Avalon are all over the States as well as the UK. But at the time, they were more of a UK-based operation, Avalon. And so it was run by Avalon, who, I say, are a very big production company here and now in America. So I entered it, and I got to the semi-final. But at the semi-final, there were 12 of us, and I had no idea when I arrived that only one person was going to go through.
Oh, man.
So I was probably a bit too relaxed, because I imagined that if I was in the best 3 or 4, I'd go through. But we all got up and did 5 minutes, and then they announced the results and said, "Right, the winner is so-and-so," a guy called Mike, actually. And that's it. The rest of you aren't through. So I suddenly realised, oh, right, it was one person out of 12, because they were running, obviously, a lot of these heats around the country. So, but they said, "You can come back next year. You can enter next year." So I then started playing gigs in pubs for no money, or for £10 or beer money. And I spent the next year doing about 300 gigs. I gigged almost every night for a year in pubs, anywhere I could. Get on stage, 5 minutes, get on stage for 10 minutes. I did anything I could anywhere. Drove up and down a few hours each way to get on stage, and honed my act. And then the next year I entered, and I went to the semi-final, and I won it. And I went to the final. Yeah, well, I mean, I'd worked very hard, but there were still 12 of us, but I won that. So I then went to the final at Edinburgh, which was 1998. And of course, in that final was Steve Merchant. Stephen Merchant was also in that final, because Stephen Merchant in 1998 was an up-and-coming new stand-up comedian, based very near where I lived. We lived a couple of miles apart from each other, and so we knew each other quite well. And Stephen Merchant was not placed in the first 3. I wasn't placed. In fact, several of the people that have gone on to, have very good careers professionally, or go as far as someone like Stephen Merchant has, weren't placed. And the people who came first and second both gave up comedy eventually. So it's strange how these things happen.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. But Stephen Merchant, carry on.
Yeah. So this is going to be end of part 1 with Geoff Whiting, and he's going to tell you the story to his rise to success as a stand-up comedian, answering the national advertising, "Are you funny?" End of part 1.